Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So today we're going to be taking a look at Adamancipator. Now that we have the latest selection pack, which of course, as we are all very well aware of by this point, brought us the tier limit deck. It did, however, also bring us another archetype, that being the Vernusylph archetype. So Vernusylph is a theme of cards I've talked about a little bit when referring to Adamancipator in the past. About how it would give the deck a pretty nice boost in power, and indeed the archetype is here to do that. Now, of course, the deck is only at this stage now that tier limits are out, but this is actually one of those decks that I do think has a decent chance of competing against the new tier limit meta. So, as far as the deck itself goes, really we haven't changed much aside from, of course, adding the Vernusylph cards. With these added, I have actually taken out the Punk package, so we are no longer playing E-Tellies, no Punk Ziamine, Deer Note, no Foxy Tune, and then the extra deck, we no longer have Chaos Ruler or Zombie Vampire. So that package has been cut for the, in my opinion, more consistent Vernusylph package. The idea here is that rather than just milling a bunch of cards, we can actually use the Vernusylphs to focus down some of our Earths to get them out of the deck. Mainly this one here, the Vernusylph of Awakening Forest. All Vernusylph monsters have an effect where you can discard it and another monster or Vernusylph card in your hand. We only play Vernusylph monsters, so it's going to be it and another monster in order to do some kind of an effect. Now, one thing you also need to know about the Vernusylph cards is that during the turn that you activate them, you can only activate Earth effects for the rest of the turn. So that is something to keep in mind. If you do use your Vernusylphs to combo off, you won't be able to use Raptite, you won't be able to negate stuff with Appaloosa on your turn, and you won't be able to, if you wanted to, like, Dweller for some reason on your turn. For some reason, I wonder what the reason could be. You won't be able to do that either, but I think that's definitely still worth it to play these despite that, so... as I mentioned, which one is it here? Vernusylph of the Awakening Forest. This one allows you to send an Earth monster from deck to the graveyard. Note that it has to be an Earth monster that can be normal summoned or set. I'm pretty sure that clause was there, like, specifically because of Block Dragons, so you can't just actually straight up send, or rather use Awakening to send Block Dragon, but you can, of course, use it to send plenty of other things, like a Xenoguitar that you might be able to banish with, like, a Gigantes and get to Block Dragon that way. You could send the Revival Golem in order to special summon it. You could send the Tackle Crusader in order to either flip one of your opponent's cards down or bounce one of their back rows to the hand. You could also send just Earth monsters just to have more in the graveyard. Or if you wanted to bring an Earth monster back with one of your other Vernusylphs, you could do that as well. We have the Vernusylph of the Misting Seedlings. This one here, again, same effect as the Awakening Forest. This one, instead of sending an Earth monster from deck to grave, it adds an Earth Fairy from your deck to your hand. Now, that can, of course, be any of the Vernusylphs themselves, as well as, of course, the Ishizu monsters. Speaking of the Ishizus, we are playing Mudora at 3 copies now. We were not doing that before, but now we definitely want 3 Mudora, as the Ishizu Shufflers are just about the best counter you could have to the tier limit, so we definitely want to make sure that we are milling them as often as possible. Oh, and then of course the third Vernusylph of Flourishing Hills. We haven't talked about this one. This one is much like Misting Seedlings, except instead of adding a Vernusylph card, instead of adding an Earth Fairy, you add a Vernusylph card. So this one, even though it's the Ultra, is actually like the least, I guess, kind of, what's the word, generic of them. It's not necessary to have these. I think you could get away with only playing like Misting Seedlings and Awakening Forest, but it's still nice to have the ability to search out your other Vernusylphs. The other really nice thing about the Vernusylphs is that, of course, in addition to discarding themselves and another monster, they then also all get to special summon an Earth monster from the graveyard, as long as it's a different name from, like, the one you send off Awakening Forest, or I think the one you add off of Flourishing Hills or Misting Seeds. But it's another way to special even more Earth monsters on the field, particularly level 4 bodies. It makes it even easier to get out the Gallant Granite there. So that's kind of the main perks of running the Vernusylph package. Just adds more consistency to this deck, really. Which, of course, this was already a fairly consistent deck. So, yeah, definitely welcome additions here. As far as how we've changed our build, like I said, we've dropped the Punk engine altogether. Cartorhyns I went down to 2, just to have some more room. I actually threw in a Fairy Tale Snow, just to kind of see, once again, how I liked it. I have played Fairy Tale Snow and Adamancipator in the past. Have kind of mixed feelings on it, but wanted to test it out here again. We are still running the Braver package, so we're still running the full package to hand rip our opponent, although I don't think we actually ended up doing that in any of the games we're going to show here. Of course, you want to be slightly careful about hand ripping. I mean, even if you hand rip against tier limits, they're going to have cards to send that aren't tier limits cards, but just make sure you're not setting their stuff up for free there. Also, the Braver Dragon itself is Earth, as is the Nefariouser Archfiend. So even if you start doing your Vernusylph stuff, you can still use the Braver Dragon and hand rip during the first turn there. So no need to worry about that. As far as the extra deck goes, we have, of course, taken out, like I mentioned before, the Zombie Vampire as well as the Chaos Ruler, because we're not playing that engine anymore. In their place, I've put in Abyss Dweller, as I've mentioned before, and I'll keep mentioning this whole season, really for as long as the deck is as powerful as it is. Any deck that can put 2 level 4 monsters on the board in any capacity absolutely needs to be playing Abyss Dweller. This card is so important to be able to handle the tier limit matchup. It's needed. And any extra deck, any deck that can make this monster, definitely go ahead and play Dweller. We're also playing a Nightmare Cerberus. This is a decent little bit of spot removal, but also it's an Earth monster, so it can activate its effects under the Vernusylph. So it's a nice way of not only having another Link 2 if needed, which sometimes you do, but also if you're locked into Earth effects, which you need to do some spot removal, you can do that with the Nightmare Cerberus. So there's our list. Now, as always, as ever, let's go ahead and break it down card by card, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at some gameplay. So we are, of course, on a 60-card deck. We are playing 1 Herald of Orange Light, 3 Maxx, 1 Prank-Kids Dropsies, 3 Adamancipator Seeker, 3 Adamancipator Researcher, 2 Cartorhyn, the Hidden Gem of the Seafront, 3 Vernusylph of the Misting Seedlings, 3 Gigantes, 3 Koa'ki Guardian, 1 Tackle Crusader, 1 Revival Golem, and then 1 Tackle Crusader, 1 Fairy Tale Snow, 3 Prank-Kids Rocksies, 2 Adamancipator Analyzer, 3 Koa'ki Supplier. We have the 3 Rockband Xenoguitar, 3 Vernusylph of the Flourishing Hills, 3 Vernusylph of the Awakening Forest, 2 Keldo the Sacred Protector, 3 Mudora the Sword Oracle, 2 Kelbek the Ancient Vanguard, 2 Agido the Ancient Sentinel, 1 Awakening of the Possessed and Nefariouser Archfiend, 1 Block Dragon, 1 Foolish Burial, 2 That Grass Looks Greener, 1 Smoke Grenade of the Thief, 1 Rod of Silence Chaos, and then 2 Called by the Grave. It's going to round out our main deck there. Now for the extra deck, we're on 1 Adamancipator is in Raptite, 1 Adamancipator is in Dragite, 1 Power Tool Braver Dragon, 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Gallant Granite, 1 Prank-Kids Meow Meow Moo, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Prank-Kids Doodle Doodle Doo, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Asa the Earth Charmer Removable, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Appaloosa, 1 Access Code Talker, and then 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. So there is our list. Oh, 2 things I thought of that I wanted to briefly touch on real quick. 3 things, actually, now that I think about it, before we move on to the games. 1, we are still on the Prank-Kids engine. I was going to play Doki Dokis instead, but I ultimately decided that I'm just not that big of a fan of a Doki Doki, honestly. Level 2 is really awkward to hit, especially in this build where we no longer have Sprite Elf. Oh, that's no longer in the extra deck either, is Sprite Elf. We're not playing that anymore. But Doki Doki, I don't know, I'm just not the biggest. I've never really been the biggest fan of it. It's a fine starter sometimes, and it's better to hit off of an Excavate, but still definitely not needed. I like the Prank-Kids engine more, just to be able to make Appaloosa very easily, as well as do some cycling for your hand if you need to, like, get some more card draw for maybe a more live play or something. Second thing I wanted to touch on was the fact that, oh no, Doki Doki was the second thing I wanted to touch on, that we're not playing that. We're playing the Prank-Kids package, like I said, and there was one more thing that I had in my head, and now I'm forgetting it, and I guess if I'll think of it later, I will definitely let you know there. Oh, it was Gigantes, that's right. We are playing 3 Gigantes. I've seen people kind of question this sometimes, but I love 3 Gigantes, especially in a 60-card deck. You always want to have one to search, and more than that, oftentimes you make your plays live by banishing a Xenoguitar in your graveyard, and Gigantes is a very convenient way to do that. So I'm huge up on 3 Gigantes and Adamancipator in general. I think it's great. But anyway, now let's go ahead and take a look at those games. Alright, first duel for this video is going to be against tier limits, I'm sure to nobody's surprise. It was a bit odd. They're playing Polymerization, which I've seen, like, just straight up vanilla poly, which I've seen some tier limit builds do. It's not the absolute worst thing you can play, but it's definitely not good in my opinion. Alright, so we're going to take the first turn here. Going to start by normal summoning the Xenoguitar, then specialing the Researcher. Opponent's going to chain their Havness, so definitely going to make sure we keep an eye on what they mill in their graveyard, if the game will let me click it. Alright, looks like they milled a Shrine and a Crime, so mainly the Shyren. Not Shrine, I said Shrine. The Shyren is the main thing we're concerned about there. Looks like we hit a Cartorhyn off of our Adamancipator Researcher, so we do have that going for us here. But it's going to drop a Roll-Close on us. That's very annoying, but we can actually play around it because of the fact that we hit specifically Cartorhyn. That allows us to sync for level 8. I'm just going to go straight into Dragite and then activate the effect here. I just need to excavate really only one rock monster, but we hit 2, so we can bounce both cards, but we just need the 1 to bounce Roll-Close. Bouncing Roll-Close will not trigger her effect, obviously because she isn't going to the graveyard. Same with the Shyren, so that's pretty nice. Opponent's going to summon Agido here. It's not going to do anything at all except just be a random body. And now we're going to continue with our plays. I'm going to bring out the Gigantes, rather, using it by banishing Xenoguitar to send to the Block Dragon, as I mentioned in the profile there. We're also going to bring back Cartorhyn and then use those 2 to make Asa the Earth Charmer immovable. I just basically did that in order to save 1 card in my hand here. Otherwise, I have to banish like 3 Earth monsters from my hand, which wouldn't have been the worst. But I'm going to go into the Nightmare Cerberus next, just to get this card, just basically to get another Earth monster in the graveyard. And because there wasn't really anything better to go for. I mean, the only other thing I really could have gone for there was like an IP Masquerena. And I'd rather have that be part of my end board if possible, so... Alright, we got our Block Dragon searches there. Gonna pitch the Cartorhyn in order to summon the Analyzer. So, even though our opponent did manage to get their, their Havness off, and they actually managed to get a Roll-Close because of the fact that they milled King of the Swamp, we were still able to play around that pretty nicely. In fact, our opponent's just gonna go ahead and concede relatively early into our play here as we start excavating with Analyzer. Of course, they know that we already have the Seeker in hand as well, in order to be... making even more excavations if we need to. So, yeah, that's a nice little game against Tearlaments. It is a short one, but, it does show that, like, yes, they can play during our turn, and even if they summon something really scary like Roll-Close, like, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily the end of the world. Again, scary, but not anything we can't handle in this situation. So, yeah, there is our first duel. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next one here. Alright, got another Tier Limits match. I hope you're ready to hear that, because all 4 of these games here are going to be against Tier Limits. Go figure! So, alright. We're going to be taking the first turn, once again, looks like here. Looking at our opening hand, it's not bad. Not great, but not terrible. We get to start by normal summoning Koa'ki Guardian, which I love to do just to make sure that I've got some kind of protection on board for my combos. Following that, I'm going to use my... Vernusylph of the Flourishing Hills, and you'll notice that I actually discarded the Maxx here. Might look a little bit odd, but the reason I wanted to do that is because I want to get 2 level 4 monsters on the board, but also, in addition to those 2, have Koa'ki Guardian, so that way I can be using my Gallant Granite while it's being protected by the Koa'ki Guardian. So I need to discard Maxx with Flourishing Hills in order to add the Awakening Forest, and then summon the Flourishing Hills. Now I can use the Vernusylph of Awakening Forest effect. I'm going to pitch Revival Golem and then bring itself back. Now I can use Revival Golem to bring itself back as well. I'm going to use 2 of my level 4s in order to make the Gallant Granite. Now we can activate Gallant Granite's effect, detaching a unit in order to add Block Dragon. This is perfect. We have 3 Earth monsters engraved to banish, and we have 4 monsters on field. I'm going to send them all for Appaloosa, although this was actually a minor misplay on my part. I actually shouldn't have done it this way. I blanked on the fact that my Vernusylphs have locked me into Earth effects, so if my opponent does end up having a response, this Appaloosa is not going to be able to protect me like it normally does, so that is something to be mindful of. I'm going to use the Block Dragon here to get the Gigantes, the Researcher, and the Seeker, and then special summon the Gigantes, of course, followed by the Researcher and then the Seeker. I'm going to do the Researcher's Excavate first, though, just to make sure I can, or rather just to see if I can hit a Koa'ki Guardian as early as possible, and in fact we did. So I'm going to just go ahead and summon that. Now I can special the Seeker from my hand and start excavating with that as well. This one, if I recall correctly, we actually whiffed, but it doesn't particularly matter at this point. Yeah, it's a whiff, but we did not need that to hit anyway. I'm going to bring back the Block Dragon here in order to sink into my Baron de Fleur. And then at this stage, because I actually can't use the effect of Raptite, I'm not going to Synchro for that. I'm actually just going to go ahead and link into my IP Masquerena. So, yeah, this end board is missing a Dragite we would normally like to have here, but otherwise it's still perfectly fine. We even have 2 monster negates here thanks to the Koa'ki Guardian plus Appaloosa. My opponent's going to start by normal summoning Divine over the Herald. I'm actually going to go ahead and activate the Appaloosa here because I know that my opponent is just going to... Sorry, I'm going to take a drink of water here. I know my opponent's just going to end up trying to send either Agido or Kelbek, and I don't want them to start milling at all for any reason. My opponent knows that they can mill against me because they know that it's not the mirror match, so I'm not going to mill anything too scary except for a Shuffler, maybe. So following the Divine, it looks like they've got a a Foolish Burial Goods in order to send the Solic. That'll let them add the Shiren. Shiren's effect is going to activate, but again, I don't want them to end up pitching one of their tier limit monsters, so I'm going to use the Appaloosa to negate here, because the Shiren itself won't get the fusion effect, but of course it's very easy for them to have another monster in hand that could. Even if they don't, I also don't want them to mill 3, so we'll just go ahead and nip it in the bud and take care of that Shiren right now with our Appaloosa. Next up is the Primal Planet, and it's funny, I actually kind of debated for a moment if I wanted, whether or not I wanted to negate this with Baron de Fleur, and I almost did, but the main reason I ultimately decided not to negate the Primal Planet Perlerino, I'm never going to say that card's name right, or spell it right for that matter. The main reason I opted not to negate this was because, honestly, the only effect I'm really concerned about at this point is the adding effect. There is the destruction effect, but I have enough disruption that I don't think my opponent's going to get to be able to, you know, start fusing by putting their tier 1 monsters back. So I decided, yeah, that's fine. They can activate Perlerino. If they add a monster, they can activate. And also, that's the thing. It's like, what are they going to add here that's actually good, right? They've already used Shiren, so they can't use that. Havness doesn't do anything. Merly they can't summon, so that doesn't do anything. And Rhinoheart they can't summon, so it doesn't do anything. So ultimately decided to just go ahead and let that resolve. And then as soon as it did resolve, before they even searched, my opponent just conceded, because I think they knew, you know, they'd already used their normal summon. They'd already tried to use Shiren. There's nothing else they had left at this point. So, excuse me. Sorry about that. There is that duel. Very nice one there. Now let's go and take a look at this next game. Alright, as I already mentioned before earlier in the video, we are only going to be up against tier limit decks here. So, this is another tier limit deck. This one's pretty standard, although they're playing Gravekeeper's Trap without actually playing Exchange of the Spirit, which is a little odd. But anyway, they're going to take the first turn this time, so now we're going second against tier limits. Going to start by normal summoning their Rhinoheart. As you can see, I also don't have like any disruption in my hand, so this will be fun to try to figure out. Anyway, they're going to send Havness and go for a Kitkalos here, using that to add a Merle. It's pretty standard stuff, honestly, from the tier limit side here. Sending the Kitkalos, special the Merle. That's going to let them mill a total of 8, which is extremely powerful. Let's see what they end up putting in their graveyard. Actually, not too much here. Well, they hit the Millers, or a Miller, that is. They also have a Shuffler in the form of a Mudora here. Oh, they hit a Rhinoheart they're going to bring back as well, but of course they've already used Rhinoheart's effect, but they might end up pitching like a Merle or a Shiren they could use the effect of there, but they didn't. They actually end up discarding a Meta Noise, and then they're going to add a Shiren. Next up is the Kelbek mills, and then the tier limit Scream is coming down. Oh, let's also see what I milled here for a moment. I milled a Kelbek here, and I don't remember if I actually end up activating it. I think I do at this point. Yes, I do. So, I know what you're thinking. Don't you not want to activate the millers against tier limits? You're just going to put stuff in their graveyard. Well, at this stage, my opponent's already like started to go off enough that, you know, they've already used Havness. I know they have a Shiren in their hand. I'm not really super... And they're already going to mill another 5 anyway. So I'm not really concerned about giving them resources. It seems like they can already do whatever they want. But what I want to do is I want to put resources in my graveyard. I want to put a Shuffler, a Keldo, or a Mudora in my graveyard. So that's why in this specific situation, I'm choosing to activate Kelbek. We end up milling a Block Dragon along the way, which is pretty nice as well. That's actually something that's going to be really important if you're playing Ashizus, not just in tier limits, but in any deck moving forward, is you really got to know when to hold your millers and when to go ahead and fire them off. Alright, opponent just actually ended up making another misplay here. They went and used their Mudora, but they did not target my Mudora for some reason. They just left it alone and instead targeted my Block Dragon. this is completely fine. I already have far more than enough ways to get access to this Block Dragon on my upcoming turn, and this Mudora is far more important. This is a tip for if you're playing Tearlaments. If you have a Shuffler in your grave and so does your opponent, definitely use yours preemptively against theirs, because the Shufflers, of course, can turn off all of your Tearlament card effects. You don't want that happening, so... yeah, I don't really know why my opponent bothered putting their own stuff back here when they could have put some of my stuff back, but... Foolish Barrel for Shiren coming down now. Now I'm going to use that Mudora that my opponent didn't put back to stop their Shiren. I'm also putting back, I want to note that what I'm putting back from their yard, aside from the Shiren, I put back, of course, their Mudora, because I don't want them to just shuffle back my Block Dragon. That's also the last Shizu Shuffler in their graveyard. Sorry, I went through that kind of quickly. Let me go through more slowly and show you. Yep, they don't have any more Shufflers, so no need to worry about that further. And then King of the Swamp, I actually put this back, so that would be a little bit more difficult for them to fuse on their turn, or on my turn, whenever they happen to fuse next, you know what I mean. So I'll put back all three of those. The Shiren won't trigger. They get the Shiren effect in hand. They did have a Keldo here, and they actually just put back a Mudora as well. Funnily enough, they actually milled the exact three that I put back with the, what do you call it, the, my Shuffler, the Mudora. And they end up going for a Bagooska, which is actually kind of funny, because when you think about how good my opponent's, like, the beginning of their turn was, the fact that they're ending on Bagooska is really, really subpar. Just goes to show the power of even a single Shuffler as disruption against Tearlaments. Alright, so my turn here. We do still have to play around this Bagooska, so we're going to have to figure that out here. So I went to normal summon this Rocksies, right? And then my opponent activates Maxx. Another misplay, another crucial misplay on my opponent's part. They only have 10 cards left in their deck, and, you know, I'm playing Adamancipator. This deck can absolutely summon 10 times. I will not have a problem doing that. Here I actually did make a little misplay, though. I think I should have tried to go for the Prank-Kids line before I went for the grass there, just to get some more, not only get some more mills with the grass, but also to maybe thin my opponent's deck down a little bit, but I don't need to, because as you can see here, with the grass, I actually managed to hit Agido, Kelbek, and Revival Golem, and that's actually enough to end the duel right here, because my opponent activated Maxx, and they only have 9 cards left in their deck. Ready? Let's resolve this Chain Link. Mill 5, yep. Mill 5, yep. Xenoguitar, does not matter at all what happens here. Summon the Revival Golem in a moment. Oh, I have Tackle Crusader even as well for a win more play. Revival Golem, and boom, there's the deck out for our opponent. But as you can see, even if our opponent had not used Maxx there, we still would have had the out. We would have just used the Tackle Crusader to flip that Bagooska face down. And then we did, to be fair, mill a lot of our decks, so we weren't going to be doing much excavating. But I think with Block Dragon, we should have had enough just summons in general to climb up to an access code, pop their board, and then win out from there. But in any case, we do have one more game to take a look at. Let's dive straight into it. And as I already confirmed earlier, our last duel, like the first 3, is going to be against Tearlaments. This is going to be another short game, but it's still going to highlight some of the important aspects of playing against Tearlaments here. So, looking at our opening hand here, this is a phenomenal opening hand. I'm going to start by normal summoning the Seeker, and my opponent's going to chain their Havness effect, so gotta be mindful of what our opponent mills here. They don't end up actually milling anything to fuse, but they do mill a Keldo. It's a little bit problematic for me. It would be more so actually if the Block Dragon was not in my hand, but the cool thing about this line that I'm going to show you is that we're actually going to play around our opponent's Shuffler, even ignoring the fact that Block Dragon is in our hand. Like, for the sake of this example, let's pretend this Block Dragon is something else. We're still going to be able to successfully make a play around this Keldo. I'll show you how. So, I'm going to sync my Seeker and my Xenoguitar into the Raptite. I then get to activate my Supplier's effect to special it, and then, of course, add the Koa'ki Guardian from deck to hand. And then now let's excavate with the Raptite. Okay, looks like we at the very least hit a Guardian, and that is going to end up being what we summon here. Now I can link these two off for Asa the Earth Charmer Immovable. This card is extremely important moving forward in this meta, not just in this deck, but you know, you might have noticed in my Tearlament deck, I'm also playing Asa for literally the exact reason you're about to see here. Well, first section, I'm going to go ahead and use my Gigantes effect to banish the Xenoguitar, sending Revival Golem, and then getting that effect off. I actually did this to maybe see if I could bait out their Keldo. I was like, is there any chance they'll just use it here? But no, they're smarter than that at least. But I do get to use my Oss's effect in order to target their Keldo, and as you can see, that immediately caused my opponent to concede. Here's basically what ended up happening. So, because I targeted their Keldo with Ossa, now they have to make a decision, right? They have to decide if they want to use the Keldo now, or just let me take it. The thing is, though, if I take it, I'm not giving it back to them. I'm going to use it to make an Xyz monster. In this case, I would definitely, not right away, but eventually make Abyss Dweller, and then keep their monster, their Keldo, underneath that. But my plan here was, you know, let's assume that they chained the Keldo, right? Let's again assume that the Block Dragon is not in our hand, and assume that they chained the Keldo. They get to put back 3 of the monsters in our graveyard, but we still have access to make a Gallant Granite and then just search up Block Dragon just that way instead. And we can also link off Ossa plus Gallant Granite to then ensure that we have enough Earth monsters engraved to summon Block Dragon. So it literally, Keldo literally does not matter at all here. And that's because of the way that I played out my turns. So that's very important knowledge for playing against tier limits. You always want to make sure that you're mindful of their shufflers if you're playing a graveyard-based deck as well. And if your deck can support Ossa the Earth Charmer, like if you play like any amount of Earth monsters, which if you're playing graveyard-based deck, you probably are, you should definitely have an Ossa in your extra deck for this exact reason. To be fair, we played Ossa before anyway, just because it was a nice link to be able to go into, but yeah, very much more important now. And there's our victory theme. Perfect. All right, so there are those games showing off the new Adamancipator deck, taking down tier limits, not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 4 times there. So yeah, tier limits are definitely not an unbeatable deck. You really just have to know what you're doing, though, when playing against them as well as playing with them. In both cases, more so than probably any other deck in the current metagame. But if you do have that knowledge, which often comes with practice as well as research, then you will definitely find yourself in a more favorable position in this meta. But in any case, that's all that I had for Adamancipators today. Thank you all so very much for watching. Now let's go ahead and move on to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack, you'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now, so without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.